Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to learn how to play Cedars from Series Exodus. This is my first how to play video, so have mercy on me. I'm going to try my best to explain how to play this game, or at least give you a really good overview of how to play this game. So let's go ahead down to the table here. I'll explain how to play the game, and hopefully this will help. Okay, so this is Cedars from Series Exodus, and the first thing we're going to do is go over the setup of the game. So for the setup of the game, you're going to pick your player count. If you're doing two-player, you're actually going to use the opposite side of this board. It's set up for 2 players. If you're playing for 3 players, you're going to block off these 2 negotiation spots, and it comes with little chips to be able to do that. You'd block off both of these. If you're playing with 4 players, you're going to leave the board alone as it is. You're going to gather up the secondary crew, and those will be separate cards. Now these are actually double-sided, so you can't accidentally shuffle them into the main deck here, but you're going to grab your workers, you're going to grab your priests, and you're going to grab your converts and put them in separate piles out for everyone to be able to get to. You're also going to shuffle this massive deck of arc cards and make that available to everyone. The other tokens that you can get throughout the game, you're going to place out. You're going to place out the jailer tokens for everyone to be able to get to. You're going to place out the mutagen tokens for everyone to be able to get to. You're going to be able to place out these gems for everyone to reach, and this is the currency in the game. And these influence upgrades, which we'll go over in a little bit. Those need to be available. You're also going to want to hand out the boards for each of the players. Each player is going to get one of these boards. They're going to have 30 influence tokens, and they're going to have 6 negotiation chips. Now these negotiation chips will go into their matching casts, and there's 6 casts available. Once you have handed that out, you're also going to hand out these rule sheets. Now these little rule guides here, there's 3 of them. So 3 of the players are going to get these little handy rule guides, and the 4th player is going to need to use the rule book itself if they want to look stuff up. As a note, there is also an expert play mode. We're not going to go over that. We're just going to go over the basic setup and rules for Cedars from Series Exodus, but know that if you're going to play with this expert play mode, there's some additional changes to setup that you're going to do. One other final thing that I'm going to mention is you're going to take these little translucent markers here. They're going to be the prestige trackers that you're going to use throughout the game, and they go here. And the last bit of setup, you're going to take 1 influence cube from each player. The first player is the last one to watch a good sci-fi film. That player is going to place their cube in the first spot, and then clockwise order for the beginning of the play, everyone else will place their cubes. That's it for the setup. Let's go ahead and go into how to play this game. Okay, so this is Cedars from Series Exodus rules. Now, when you start this, you're going to go over and try to get the most prestige points by the end of the game. Whoever has the most prestige points wins. This game takes over 4 turns, and each of them consisting of 5 main phases. You're going to have the preparation phase, the foundation phase, the negotiation phase, integration phase, and prestige phase. For the first turn of the game, you're going to skip the preparation phase. The preparation phase is basically going to resolve 2 different things. What it's going to do is some effects and cards in this game are going to have you turn them sideways to show that you used that effect during that round. If you did any of those, then you're going to need to turn those cards back. Now, just to briefly go over, there's 2 types of cards in this game. There's going to be character cards, which are going to have the symbol up right here, and then there's going to be unit cards, which are going to have this symbol right here. Cards in this game are going to be multi-purpose, but we're going to go over those in a second. But just know that throughout the game, you're actually trying to combine crew with a unit, and you can have up to 2 crew in 1 unit. And these cards are built so they can slide in together, and you can see the crew ability with the unit. But we're going to go over that in a second. So in the preparation phase, like I said, you're going to turn any of those cards that you have upright, and then you're also going to determine turn order. You already did this in the setup of the game, so you don't need to do this in preparation phase, so that's why it's skipped. But what you're going to do is the player with the lowest amount of prestige points puts theirs in the first player slot, and then from reverse prestige order, all the other ones are going to go there. Now, if there's a tie, those tied players don't move their prestige or move their turn markers right here. They stay where they're at. So that's pretty much all you're really going to be doing during the preparation phase of the turn. Now we're going to go into the foundation phase. In the start of the foundation phase, the first player is going to hand out 4 of these arc cards to each player. After the first turn, players are actually allowed to keep 1 card, up to 1 card at the end of their turn. So at this point, if a player already has a card, they'll get their 4 cards, but they'll have to discard 1 of them before they continue. So keep that in mind. You can keep your card, but in this main phase here, this foundation phase, you can only have 4 cards at the end of it. Now, if you're playing in a 2-player game, you're only going to distribute 2 cards. So in a 2-player game, you only get 2, but any other player count, you're going to get 4. Now, there is a variant in this that I suggest using all the time after your first play, and that is when you draw your 4 cards. Now, if you kept one behind, you're going to keep it down in front of you and not do this. But you're allowed to draft these cards, which I think is really cool. So you can actually pick one of these cards, pass it to the next player, they'll pass it to you, and you'll pick one, and you keep going until you have your cards for that phase. I like that a lot, and I highly recommend it. But no, that's a variant on there. You don't actually have to do that. You can just do it. You keep what you get. All right, now we go into what's known as the negotiation phase. And in the negotiation phase, you're going to do some card setup. Now, there is a change for expert play for this that we are not going to go over, but just know that there is a different setup for that, or slightly different rules for that. What you're going to do is you're going to take the top 12 cards and place them in here. And technically what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to put them in order here. So, whoops, where's 1? Okay, that is 1. 1, 2, 3, and you can see these little numbers down here tell you where they go. And you're going to place 12 cards out on the board. And this is going to make up the game board for this turn that players are going to go through and try to acquire these cards using their negotiation chips, which we're going to show in a second. So, now that these are all out, we're going to go now in turn order. So the yellow player would go first. And you're going to pick one of the 6 negotiation chips that you have, and you're going to place them out on the board. So I'm going to look at what I have all available here, and I'm going to say, okay, well, I want to place out this negotiation chip here, which you can actually lift this board up if you have problems picking it up, which is nice. I'll fix that in a second. Let's say I want to put that guy here. Okay. So now what happens when I place out my negotiation chip? I'm going to put out my influence cubes based on the placement of my negotiator chip. Now, as you see, so I put out the Theocrat negotiation chip, and you'll notice that these values here, so I'm going to show you this real quick. You notice that these start out with 1 and 1. So that means I'll put 1 here and 1 here for my influence counter. However, if the symbols match, so this symbol here matches this symbol, I get a bonus cube, and that will go here. Now, players are going to take turns placing out all of their negotiation chips throughout the board. And I'm going to probably set up here an example real quick, and we're going to go over what happens for the next portions here. Okay, now you're actually going to continue doing this until all the negotiation chips are placed out, but we're just going to do these couple here for the examples. Now, right before we actually resolve how these chips go out, players can activate the abilities on their cards. And we're going to go over what the different activation abilities that you can have on the card in a little bit, but just know at this point, before we do negotiations resolution, you can activate the abilities on your cards. And most of the time, you can only ever activate your abilities on the negotiation and integration phases of the game. But you can activate your abilities. Sometimes they will change things that occur before they do. Maybe add influence tokens, remove influence tokens, do all sorts of fun stuff. The negotiation resolution phase is pretty simple throughout the game. What you're going to do is the resolution of negotiator begins with all negotiator spots that are occupied. So anything that has stuff in here that has negotiation on them that are occupied, they're going to go fire off first. And they are resolved one by one, going in ascending orders numbered on the negotiation chambers. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes around. So the first one will be resolved, and simply what you're going to basically do for these ones is you're going to take a look. And this is the first one. You're going to say, who has the most influence cubes on this location? Now, in this case, there's a tie. So no one does. So this card will become discarded. And I know in a normal example, we go to this one next, but we're just going to show an example over here. So when this one gets resolved, the red player has more influence cubes than the yellow player, so they'll get this card, and you'll be able to put it in their hand. When you're actually able to claim a card like this, you're going to have to return one of your negotiation chips to your board. If you don't have a negotiation chip and you won the card, you still get the card. But if you can, you have to return that chip to your board. Once all the cards have been won and you've completed all these cards on the board, each player can upgrade one of their negotiators remaining on the board. So if there's any negotiators remaining on the board, meaning you didn't win any cards, you can upgrade that negotiator. Okay, so upgrading your negotiators, basically what you're going to do is the ones remaining on the board, so they didn't get picked up. You're going to take your board here, and you're going to upgrade any the left or the right of the negotiator that's remaining on the board. Now, you can only up these by one, and the max they can go is 3. So I can pick the left or the right, and let's say I put that in as 2. So this one now can put 2 negotiation chips on the left and 1 on the right, and that's always how that works. And you're going to do that for all the tokens that are remaining on the board. You're going to be able to upgrade your influence for the future rounds, or turns in this case. All right, now we get into phase 4, which is the integration phase. And there's a couple different things you can do on your turn. Following in turn order, each player can perform the following in the integration phase. On their turn, they can play one or more of the following actions as many times as they wish. So you're basically going to resolve everything you want to do then. Keeping in mind and remembering at the end of the round, you can only have up to 1 card left over. So you want to pay attention to that. You can recycle a card. You can integrate a card into your arc. You can activate a technical cast ability, or you can move one crew from one unit to another. Action has to be completed before you do the next action. If you recycle a card, when you're looking at these cards, the recycle value of a card, let's actually go over the anatomy of these cards real quick, just again. So the anatomy of these cards is going to be a couple different things that you're going to notice on here. One is this is your recycle cost. So if you recycle this card, meaning you discard it, you're going to get that many gems. That is what you're going to get for that. That's your recycling points. And you can use these to then do other stuff. And one of the things you can do is when you place these cards down, you have to pay the cost here on the right. And this is how much it costs. This also here, this number here is how many prestige points you get for playing this card. Couple other values that are on here that are important is going to be the type. Now there's 2 different types in this deck. There's going to be unit, which denotes this symbol. It also says unit right there. And then there's characters. So that's going to be symbol, and that's going to say, well, this is crew, sorry. And that's going to be your crew. We're going to go over what this means here in a second. But those are the big things we're going to look at first. And then you also have its ability. And we're going to go over those in a little bit because there's different types of activations that you're going to have on these cards. But that's the two things we're going to pay attention for right now. One was that recycling cost, which is one of the actions you can do, discard a card for recycling. The next thing is you can integrate a card into your arc. When you integrate a card into your arc, again, you're going to look at right here, and that's how much it costs. You're trying to pair these up. So you're trying to pair up a unit with a person, a crew, because they have, in order for them to do stuff, they need to be together, or at least meaningful stuff. You're going to, then you can pick two different other actions, but you're going to basically continue this until you only have one card or less, is your goal. You can also activate a technical or cast ability. Now we're going to go more into detail on abilities in a second, but again, that's going to be this portion of the card right here. In this case, this one says that you have to tap this card or turn it to the side, and you have to spend that resource in order to do it. And then this, in the Wings of Whispers, you may move up to 2 cubes of the same player to other negotiation zones. So this is an example that you would actually do when you're placing out your negotiation tokens. But like I said, you have in your integration phase, you can also use these abilities if they apply. And the last one's pretty simple. So if I have 2 of these units out, I can move one crew to another. And we're going to go over a little bit more what's going to happen next. But before I do that, I do want to not forget to mention that you can also pick up these guys if you want to, using the abilities that are on these cards. So don't forget, I wanted to mention that a lot of these cards will have ability where you can get the extra crew members over here and put them in. So don't forget that players can pull from those crews in here. Otherwise, you can't normally get them from here. Once everyone has completed this to their satisfaction, fired off their abilities, got their workers, done all their fun stuff, did their attacks, which is a lot of attacks in this game, then we actually get into the prestige phase of the turn, and that's going to be the final portion. On here, the most important part of this part is going to be the arc reorder. You can actually, because you're going to lose people in this game and lose stuff, you can then, before we do any of the prestige counting, you can move around all of your crews and units the way that you see fit in order to ensure that you're going to get the most influence points during this phase. So at the end of this phase here, what we're going to do is during turn order, each player is going to count the prestige points granted by each of the prestige abilities, which we'll go over in a little bit, of all the cards they control, and move their score marker up accordingly. Units that are not hosting a crew do not activate their prestige abilities. So they actually have to have a crew in there to be able to activate their prestige abilities. Crews that are still vacant also do not activate their prestige abilities. In addition, vacant crews are ignored by other cards. Now, one thing to remember about a vacant crew, so at the end of the turn, if you have anything vacant, you have to flip it over. You can then do things with these on the next round, but if you don't, and these cards don't get paired up and still remain vacant, they're actually discarded and lost. So that is important to keep in mind. So if you end up having vacant crews because they got separated from the cruiser units and they got separated, it's important to remember that you will probably want to utilize them the next round. It's also important to note that if you get any Mutagen Counters, which we'll go over again, or jailer tokens, on a vacant crew, then they're not discarded. Just flip the card over and put them on top of that card. If you reactivate that card for any reason, you still get to keep those. We're going to go over some card abilities, but in general, that's it. That's going to be your points from the game, and whoever has the most prestige points is going to win at the end of the game. Now, a couple things to keep in mind throughout the game is going to be 2 main abilities. And these abilities are going to be the jailer ability, which you're going to get from these jailer tokens. And if we run out of jailer tokens and your card has a jailer ability, they don't get the ability. And then we also have these Mutagen Counters. Now, the Jailer ability is pretty cool because what it basically does, it gives you the ability to place a Jailer token onto a card of your choice. And again, if there's no more Jailer tokens, you don't get the ability. If you spend this to place it on a card, you're also going to need to spend one resource, which is those gems over there, to be able to do it. If you capture or jail a card, a couple different things happen. You're going to start any mutagen or Jailer tokens on it, and they become a prisoner. So once they're done, you take that card and you place it over in your area. Now you can also bring a card out of jail by spending one Jailer token and one resource and pick a crew from your own jail and place it into your hand. So you can jail an opponent's card, place it over to your area, and then on a future action you can spend another Jailer token and another resource, these gems, and get that card into your hand to be able to use it. So you can basically steal cards from other players. Takes a couple actions to do it, but it's still really good. The other thing we're going to talk about real quick is going to be these Mutagen Counters. On your turn, basically what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to take one of your negotiation or on either a negotiation or integration phase. You're going to flip one of these tokens over to the mutant side, which is the mutagen side, and place it onto any crew in play. That crew is now considered a mutant in addition to its other abilities, so you can do this on opponents or yourself. Now, keep in mind that if you run out of mutagen tokens, you don't get one. So if a card comes in with that ability, you don't get it, just like the Jailer tokens. And also, if a card becomes jailed, it also loses the mutagen counter. Things throughout the game will actually interact with things that are mutants. So there's a lot of beneficial things that can happen by making crew members mutants. Now, I did mention these extra crew members over here. Now, the way you're going to get those is you're going to have different cards that come out and play, and they're actually going to have the symbol on that says recruit. So they're going to say recruit specific types, and you'll get them. That's basically how that works. There's going to be mainly 4 different types of abilities throughout the game, too, and we're going to show you those 2 now. All right, so we're going to go and see some of these abilities. One of them is going to be the integration ability, and what's going to happen is this card right here, when you have integration ability on the top with that symbol, whenever you play this, whatever it says here just immediately occurs. So this is just going to be a one-time effect that will occur as soon as you play the card. This one here's symbol here, see it better, is for a basic like triggered effect. So for this one here, if you sacrifice a novice, you get to draw a priest. That's basically what that does. Every time you can sacrifice a novice, you'll get to draw a priest. Now each of them are different, but that's just what that symbol on top is going to tell you that you can do it anytime. This one here, you're going to have to turn this card to the side to activate it, so once per turn. And you also pay your resource, which is those gems, and then you get the ability down here. You will have to sacrifice a convert and draw a card. Now there's a couple. Now we just showed you the sacrifice one, which was the other one. It shows you what must be sacrificed, and then you get the ability down below. And you can do that multiple times depending on the card, whether it makes you, if it makes you tap the card, you can't do it multiple times. But if it's just one of those, one with that single resource icon on it, that means you can do it any time. The other thing is you're going to be having prestige abilities, and what prestige abilities are going to do is they are going to give you points for 4 different groupings. Let's get those real quick. Okay, so you're going to have affinity cards. So with affinity cards, basically what they're going to do, so we're going to show you different types. You're going to have affinity up on here. So this one says you're going to get, for each of prisoners, you're going to get 1 prestige point each. This one here, majority, if you have the most, you'll get this many points. That's basically what that means for that too. So those are 2 of the different abilities for prestige abilities you can get. There's also safe and hospital. So like this one here, hospital, so it has a little hospital symbol on there. What this means is during the prestige phase, you're going to gain 2 prestige points for each mutant primary crew hosted in your hospital arc. So whoever's in here and is a mutant, you'll actually get 2 additional prestige points. Now, the last one's going to be safe. So you're going to see it has this keyword safe on here. During your turn, during the negotiators or integration phase, you can transfer resources, which are those little gemstones, from your supply onto the safes. And you can spend these however you want, but at the end of the prestige round, you're going to gain 1 point for each of the resources, those little gemstones, on each of your units with the safe ability. So these will give you points, but they're a little dangerous because if an opponent destroys this card, you lose all those resources too. So there's a little bit of a risk with those guys. And that is all the rules from Seeders from Series Exodus. That should give you a general idea of how to play the game. And if you have any questions, the rule book is pretty detailed and has a glossary in the back.